When's the last time a doctor said, what's your diet? What's your exercise routine? How much sun are you getting? Like, it's just, here you go, take this.
Yep.
Here you go, take this. Right? Like, we just stopped honoring the actual God's design of a bird doesn't say, I'm not going to fly south this year. I just don't feel like it.
Yeah.
It's hardwired into them to honor their design, right? The problem is we have software, not hardware.
Hey guys, this episode is brought to you by Weapon X Holsters, quality handmade Kydex holsters made right here in Southern Utah. You can stop by the store, 1397 West Sunset Boulevard, number 115 in St. George, Utah. Hey guys, welcome back to the Derick Leg Podcast. We are in the vault again today, episode 83. We've got a local celebrity OG podcaster today. I'm excited to have him.
Now you're already talking dumb shit, bro. OG celebrity podcast.
OG, bro. I even wrote that down to say OG.
Jeez.
This is Trevor Cowley.
Yeah.
What's up, man?
In the flesh, OG in the flesh.
OG, man.
Oh, that's so weird.
I know, right? Like you were just saying 4 years, but like 4 years, not a long time.
It's not.
But at the same time, like, dude, that's consistency of 4 years.
Yeah.
That's something.
That's really all it takes just with anything.
Yeah.
That's what's lacking in the world is consistency.
100%.
So, like when we started our podcast, we just went into it and said, let's not judge it for 3 to 5 years. Like most people wouldn't start a business and judge it in 3 months and be like, well, it's just not profitable and I'm not rich yet. Let's quit and give up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like it takes time for great things to happen or unfold. And so we just said, whatever happens, whether we have 0 listeners or, 5 listeners, let's just commit to at least a 3 to 5 year period.
Okay.
And see where this thing takes us.
Yeah.
And here we are on year 4 and it's done some cool stuff for us,
So the Real Business Owners Podcast.
Yeah.
It's funny, man, because I had a friend tell me about it maybe 3 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And I jumped in, started, because I was like, hey, these guys are from here. Mm-hmm. And I had heard your name. Like, I have brothers your age.
Yeah.
So I'd heard your name a few times, and Kel Goodman.
Yeah.
And Goodman, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Said that, right. And then I was like, wait. Kel Goodman on there.
On Instagram, it's Kel Greatman.
Is there really?
Yeah, he adjusted it. So he went from a Goodman to a Greatman.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
And so I started listening to you guys. I'd listened to Andy Frisella, Ed Milet, those guys. And so it's kind of surreal to me to bring you on, and then we're going to have Kel on later. We haven't lined it up yet, but I kind of wanted to have you guys separate. I didn't want to bring you in together. You have separate stories, backgrounds.
Yeah, absolutely. He'd love to do it. Yeah, he'll do it.
Yeah.
So I'll put a bug in his ear today when I get to the office if you haven't already done it. So.
Yeah. Well, one of Eric Gubler's events.
Oh, yeah.
So I want to tell a story a little bit because, like, I was nervous, and I don't know why, but like starting the podcast, I've really had to get out of my shell of talking to people, inviting people on. Like a lot of people that come on are just people that I see from now and then, and from time to time. And I'd been in some circles where you guys were in it, but in my mind, you guys were like already doing it. Like you were the guys to look up to. And so I was kind of trying to model after you guys. And then I get in the same room as you, and I don't even really know what you call it, but like I don't ever feel like I'm on someone else's level.
Imposter syndrome?
Sure. Yeah. And so I'm like, when I get in those rooms with some of these guys, I'm like, I shouldn't be here.
Good.
That
means you're in the right room, bro.
If
you were legitimately, in the room, you're like, I should be here. You're probably not in the right room.
Yeah, the smartest guy in the room type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. You should be in a room that stretches you, where you're like, dang, there's these guys or this guy or whatever it is. That's just more of a sign that you're doing something right. And I think a lot of people, when they feel imposter syndrome, they go back into their shell and go back into the environments
you're comfortable,
that they're most comfortable in, right? Where they feel accepted or, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And that's why they remain the same. So, we talked at that event and you said, yo, I want to have you guys on the podcast. I was like, let's do it.
It was like no big deal.
Yeah. Like
But to me, I was
we
like,
do podcasts
okay.
too, bro. We know how it is, dude. We've been year 1, year 2, you know what I mean?
Right.
We've been through the gamut. So, like, wondering if people want to come be interviewed on a podcast, it's like, and it is weird at first. You're just like I remember having the first guest on, and like, I didn't know how to even do an introduction and, hand it off, and it was just. But now it's just
work through it, and
now it's just
4 years down the road.
Yeah. So, but like I said, like before we came on, I still get the jitters right before. And again, I think that that's more of a sign that you're doing something right. Before, when I played baseball, I had the jitters before every time I took an at bat, right? But that's because I wanted to perform, and I wanted to perform at a high level, and didn't want to strike out. So I kind of had the jitters like a performance jitter,
Yeah.
I guess I would call it, right? And so that still happens. That ain't going nowhere, bro. So
It's more of a get used to it.
Yeah, it's more of like it's game time.
Yeah, it should be
It just
there.
is what it is. So
Like that. Yeah, so I kind of approached both you guys. I was nervous and said, hey, man, I do this little humble podcast, and, I'm not big time like you guys, but I was wondering if you could take some time out. And it was funny because I think both of you guys were like, dude, it's not that big of a deal. But to me, I was like, this is kind of a cool thing to have you guys on. So anyway, I appreciate you coming on, dude.
Absolutely.
And I like that you're very structured. I wish I was more structured, but we typically do this at night. But I
love morning podcasts.
Yeah.
I hate night podcasts. Like, we don't really record ours at night. We always record in the morning.
Are you more of a morning person?
I'm a morning person. I love getting up early and getting after it, right? And so let's front load it.
Got you.
Is more my life. So when I got the text, hey, this is, I'm like,
yeah.
Like, I'm down to be on, but like, can we do it in the morning?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and the other reason, you take time with your family.
Yeah.
And dude, and I'm still trying to figure this out, and I don't know if anyone really has it figured out. So I'll pose the question to you too, but like, what's the balance? How do you make a balance? And I'm starting to realize, like, you kind of just don't, you just do your best.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're trying to be great at anything, there's no such thing as balance.
There you go.
So early on in business, I was very heavy in business. Guess what? I've been able to buy back my time and start to balance it out a little bit. But like, the pendulum has to swing in the area that you want to grow or that you want to result in, right? And so if it's in business, dude, you're going to be over here in business far more than you're going to be at home. And, it just, that's the way it is. Michael Jordan didn't become Michael Jordan because he was like rolling around on the floor with his kids every single day for endless hours.
5 p.m.
Yeah.
Be home.
Yeah. No, like that just wasn't what created him. He was very imbalanced, but look at his life now. He could do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, with whoever he wants, right?
Yeah.
And look, dude, early on, even in business, bro, like my wife would call me at the office and I would say, what? Like, I'm in business mode. Unless it's an emergency, don't call. Like I'm not saying that that's the right way to handle it. I was an absolute dickhead. Right. And so I feel like I need to make up for some of the things that, that I did, or for the individual that I was when I was so focused on what I was trying to accomplish. Right. In terms of trying to balance things out, you have to get rid of all the nonsense. The problem is people say, well, balance this. Well, you're balancing social media more than you're balancing your children. You're balancing watching the game on Saturday or Sunday more than you are hanging out with your children. There is time, and that's what I realized with age. It's just there's not time when you're focused on all the bullshit or all the wrong things that can create a conversation around the cooler at the office, right? Oh, did you see so-and-so? Like, dude, I get to see all the cool shit too. It's called ESPN. They show you all the cool highlights within a matter of like 30 seconds of the entire game. I haven't watched a football game in its entirety in like 2 or 3 years. I don't know if it's 2 or 3 because I've just lost track. But it got to a point where if it doesn't grow my bank account, if it doesn't grow me spiritually, if it doesn't grow me as a father or as a husband or physically, or mentally, I don't have time for it anymore. right? And so when you figure out what your priorities are, you then create structure around those priorities. And when you go all in on your health and you go all in on your business and your family, guess what? There's not a whole lot of time left for the bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, I move my body twice a day, every single day. I read 10 pages minimum every single day, right? I show up to the office when I need to be at the office. I show up for my family when I need to show up for my family. I'm big on creating environments for yourself that will help you grow in the areas that you want to grow, right? Like we have control over the environments that we put ourselves in, right? So like it was last year that I was like, okay, I make great money, but it wasn't, I guess it's 2023, bro. So it was 2021. It was the end of 2021 where I made the most money that I had ever made, but I felt the most hollow that I've ever felt. Because I was so singular. It was just about money. Money was going to solve all this poor boy's problems, right?
Yeah.
When you grow up poor and you look at your environment, it says all of our problems are due to lack of money, right? But that's just surface level shit. That's all you see as a kid,
Exactly.
right? Like, well, the lights are getting shut off. That's a money problem. Like we don't have food in the cabinets. That's a money problem. Our shoes have holes in it, so we got to put cardboard on the bottom so that our feet don't go through. That's a money problem. So it was burned into my soul and into my mind that if I make a bunch of money, my problems are solved. So that's why I say, don't call me unless it's an emergency, because I didn't know how to go from business guy to husband. I didn't know that yet, right? Like, so, and I was an asshole when I was in business, right? Like I wanted to get shit done. I was very, very focused because I just didn't want to be poor. And so it's like, I was kind of an asshole, kind of a dickhead. Well, not kind of, I was, just, yeah.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But do you think that's what you had to be though?
I thought that's what I had to be. So I was doing what I thought was right to create a situation for my family long term. But again, it was just youth, inexperience, that didn't know how to go from business guy to dad or husband or whatever, right? I'm like, my daughter was only 1 year old or something like that. Now I got a couple kids, and it's a little bit easier for me with perspective and age to balance that out and take a FaceTime from my 2-year-old daughter when I get to the office without blowing up.
Yeah.
But
I'm working, honey. What do you want?
yeah. What the but I got to the lowest point that I'd ever got, like mentally, and it's because when you're striving for something and this something is going to be the answer to all your problems, at least when you're striving for it, there's hope. But what happens when you catch that thing that's supposed to be the answer to all your problems and it's not the answer to all your problems? Even the hope is now removed. So you're just left there by yourself wondering, what the hell did I just spend the last decade doing? This was supposed to be it. Money was going to solve, but here I am. I'm still left with a hollow, soulless human being, right? Because I wasn't building myself on the journey. I was only focused on the money and being an asshole or whatever it is to try to just get money, right? That doesn't build an individual of integrity or character if you're solely focused just on money, right? And so it got to the point where it was like, okay, well, I have that thing that I've been chasing forever, which is money. And I'm at the lowest point that I've ever been at in my life, mentally and emotionally. And I had to ask myself some questions, right? What is it that makes you feel best in your body and mind? Like, when you just feel good, not cashing a check or just remove money from the equation, what makes you feel whole?
Are you asking me?
No,
Oh.
I'm just saying. Like,
So you're just looking at me.
Yeah. Hey, that's how serious it was, right?
Yeah.
Like this is how deep I was really just
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
with myself, right? Um, and I reflect back and I said, when I move my body, I feel good. I feel good in my body and my mind when I'm moving it. When I was reading every single day, I felt good in my mind. I felt like our human design, like it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at the human design and say, okay, well, it looks like you're built for movement. You got these legs and arms, and oh, you've got a brain that has the ability to continue to grow. Okay, so we can continue to grow mentally. So what happens if we're not honoring the human design and moving our body and growing our mind? Your mind turns on itself, right? And I think that that's why, mental health is at an all-time low or high. I don't know how you would put that, but it's at
Yeah.
an all-time high for it being at an all-time low in terms of just overall humanity, right? Like anxiety, depression, mental health problems, like, but at the same time, when's the last time a doctor said, "What's your diet? What's your exercise routine? How much sun are you getting?" Like it's just, here you go, take this.
Yep.
Here you go, take this. Right? Like we just stopped honoring the actual God's design of a bird doesn't say, I'm not going to fly south this year. I just don't feel like it.
Yeah.
It's hardwired into them to honor their design, right? The problem is we have software, not hardware. We can, and the reason why it's software is because when we're put into an environment, we're supposed to be able to mold to that environment, right? So we look around and say, who do we need to be in order to survive here? You put certain animals in the Himalayas or at the top of Mount Everest, they can't survive. But humans can go into any environment and adapt because we have software instead of hardware, right? But we still have a basic design that needs to be honored. And if we're not honoring that, how do you expect to feel good in your body and mind? Like, don't honor the design of your car, bro. Don't take it in for an oil change. Don't put water in the gas
Yeah.
tank.
See how
Don't
that
honor,
goes.
yeah, like what are we putting in our gas tank, right? And so if we're not honoring the design, eventually, it's just not going to function or work how it should or how it's designed to, right? I believe that we're designed perfectly. And as long as we honor it, we will feel good in our body and mind. And so I got to that point when I was low. I had to ask myself some questions. I said, when I move my body and when I read and I'm moving my mind and I'm growing and I'm challenging myself, that's when I really feel best, right? I just maybe was at the lowest point because I was just like, well, where do I go now? What's the next or new challenge, right? Like, what's the new version of me? Because I got what I wanted. Now yes, it is what I wanted, but I just realized that there was much more to life after accomplishing that one singular goal.
Right.
I left myself behind. I left, my family behind. I left a lot of things behind, right? And so from that point forward, that was late in 2021. I said, okay, I'm going to start this next year, January 1, 2022, doing, 2-a-days reading. I started with 75 Hard. Some people have heard of it. Some people may not, but, so it wasn't initially like, let's do 2-a-days every day and read every day for 1,000 days. But I think that that's also the power of like micro commitments and as long as you're honoring those commitments, how that commitment can lead to another one and another one and another one. And before you know it, you won't even recognize the individual that you're becoming, right? So I got to 75 days and I said, anybody can do 75 hard. I've seen it a billion times on social media. This isn't really that cool to me if everybody's doing it, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
How
so
does that
I'm,
set you apart if
yeah,
everyone can do it?
like, yeah, like that's 75 days, just like thousands of others, right?
Right.
Like it didn't feel like I should stop there. So I said, I'm going to do 100 days because I rarely see somebody do 100 days straight, right? And I got to 100 days and I was like, that's a long streak, dude.
Yeah.
I don't want to lose that. And so on 100 days, I was like, I removed the sticking to one diet because I still want my wife's enchiladas.
There you go.
So like the 100 days was very strict, but after that I said, again, I feel good in my body and mind when I'm moving it and I'm moving my mind with information and moving my body, right? And so I said, I'm going to continue to do 2-a-days and read 10 pages every single day all year. The year came and it went, right? And I'm like, I'm 365 days deep in this thing. I don't want to lose the like now it's just who I am.
That's what I was gonna say.
It's just like this is my daily routine. And that's what I was hoping for, is that if I commit to something long enough that it just becomes a part of my identity and who I am.
Yeah.
And I'll just want to honor it regardless, because now it's a lot easier for me than like forcing myself to do it when I started on January 1, 2022. And so after, it was literally December 31st, just recently, I was just like, oh, man, tomorrow's January 1st. Like I kind of felt like, now what? And I was like, I'm going to stretch it. Like I'm done making small goals, right? Like a year or resolute. Like I'm like, let's make a bigger goal that's a lot scarier, and let's commit to this for 1,000 days. I'm already 365 days deep. So I get on my phone and I'm looking it up, and it's like September 24th, 2024 or something like that is 1,000 days. And I was like, that's what I'm going to do. Right. And when you move your body twice a day and you got to make time for reading, it forces you to live with a little bit more structure. So I'm honoring my design in that way. I'm still honoring, the financial part of my life through business. We just brought on a CEO. The idea is to build actually a business, not stay self-employed, right?
Right.
And fire yourself from each position until you don't necessarily have to show up. But there was a CFO of Squatty Potty that got funded by Shark Tank, whatever, Devin Brady. We brought him on in August as our CEO. So he's running the day-to-day operations now to where we can focus a little bit more on real business owners in the mastermind.
And that's the easier accounting?
Yeah, that's easier accounting. Yeah. And so, we're handling business on the business front. My money's good. My health is good. I feel good in my mind. And then you text about, doing an evening podcast. It's like, yo, I can't do that. Like I already take, enough time between traveling for business or our masterminds, this, that, the other, that like when I'm not doing that type of stuff, that I don't want to take more time away from my family in the evenings, because literally that's all they see of me really, right? Is, kids go to bed at, 9:30. So, living in Virgin, it takes me a minute to get home. So sometimes I don't get home till, 6:00 at night. And I try to get both of the workouts done prior. On the weekends, obviously, I'm gone for a minute, but my son, used to go for walks and runs with me because they saw me doing what I was doing. Like on my birthday, my 38th birthday, I ran 38 miles. I started at midnight, and was like midlife crisis type shit, right? Like I can either buy the drop top or I can do something really stupid, just to see if I still got it,
Sure.
So I was like, yeah, I'm going to, run 38 miles on my 38th birthday. My son wanted to come with me. Not literally run, I rented an RV and had people follow me so I can get in every 10 miles, hydrate, whatever. But he wanted to run the last few miles with me, and he did.
And he's how old?
He was 6 at the time.
Okay.
And so after he ran the last couple miles with me, he said, Dad, I want to run 7 miles for my 7th birthday. I said, done. And his birthday was in October. So his birthday comes, we run 7 miles for his 7th birthday. My daughter's birthday's in November. She says, I want to run 13 miles for my 13th birthday. So for her 13th birthday, we signed up for the Snow Canyon half. It was like a week after her birthday, and we ran 13.1 miles together, right? And so that's why I'm really big on environments, because I have to create an environment for me to go into to stretch my body and my mind. I have to create an environment in my home. Like last night, I opened my book to read, and my 2-year-old hops on the couch right next to me, and she grabs a book and reads. She says, I'm reading just like you. Like,
dude, I'm getting chills.
Like, how are you really showing up?
Yeah.
Like the old version of me was vegging out, like trying to find ESPN or find the game or find something to like mentally clock out. But the fact is, more lessons are caught than taught. We could tell them to do all of these cool things, but that's really meaningless if they're not seeing you actually do the cool things. Right. And so I create environments for myself financially, personally, in terms of my health and my fitness, that I have to show up to every single day, that I know that if I do that, I will feel good in my body and mind, and I'm not going to get back to the low place. That low place was so painful that I would rather go through the pain and the headache of getting up early and having to do 2-a-days than have the pain of feeling hollow and low. Like, regardless, we will suffer. Like, that's just what's going to happen for human beings. It's whether or not there's meaningful suffering. Are you growing from your suffering, or are you just suffering because life is happening to you?
Right.
Right? Like, your brain's turning on itself. Like, what do you want your brain to fucking do? If you're not feeding it information, of course it's going to turn on itself. It doesn't have anything else better to do.
Yeah, it's not entertained by anything.
Yeah, it's eating you. Like, that's all it does, right? And we get artificial dopamine from shit. Like, we post something and we get likes and it feels good, but we don't really earn that. And when what happens when you eat artificial sugars or artificial this, you're going to pay a consequence. So you're getting artificial dopamine, and what happens is you end up being dopamine deficient, and then you end up in a lower place than what you were when you were originally seeking the dopamine. So what do? The problem perpetuates. So you want to make another post. If you're a girl, maybe a little more scandalous of a pic, or, whatever it is. Maybe if you're overweight, you eat another burger, another fries, or another slice of pizza, or another bowl of ice cream, because when you eat it, it feels good when you're eating it, but then after you feel like even more hollow and guilt and shame. So what do to cover up? You do it again so that you don't have to feel that. And then you end up getting into a very, very low spot. And I'm a big believer in earning your dopamine. Like, it got to the point where, like, I was wondering, why the hell, like, does a David Goggins do what David Goggins does? It didn't make sense to me for a minute. I'm like, who would purposely torture themselves like that?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. And then I started thinking about it, and I said, well, of course it doesn't make sense, because I've never done it. Like, how would I wrap my head around why he's doing it if I've never put myself in a situation to feel that type of pain or go through that type of adversity? And then it hit me. And I'm like, it's like a pendulum. Like, look, it's right, left, up, down, north, south, like everything equals out, right? And so I was like, if we pin our foot on pain for a minute on purpose, and then we pull back, the pendulum must swing to pleasure. I'm like, we just don't understand. For as extreme of misery as they're facing, that would mean one thing, that they're also experiencing extreme euphoria. That's why we don't understand it. Why would they keep doing it if there wasn't that?
Right.
It wouldn't make any sense, right? And so I was just sitting there thinking, I'm like, misery, pain, misery. Like, why would this guy keep doing that? There's got to be something on the other side of that humans just aren't understanding, or else he wouldn't just keep doing it. Right. And so I was like trying to logically break down, like, why are these people doing dumbass shit, and putting themselves in miserable or hurtful, painful environments.
Right.
And it started to make sense to me, is like, there's an equal or opposite reaction, whatever the scientific damn terms are. I'm not smart.
I'm not a scientist.
Yeah, I ain't a scientist. I'm not an accountant either. But hey, I'm not a neuroscientist either. But here I'm talking about dopamine and this and that.
I know the words.
Yeah, I read a book called The Brain once. Actually, I've read it 3 times because that shit's interesting as hell to me. And the reason why I say that is because, like, literally, your brain has the ability to determine how your entire life turns out. And so it's like, if I can figure out the mind and the brain and understand it, then I can game it.
Right.
Right? Like, if we don't understand it, how can you game something that you just flat out don't understand? So I wanted to understand how the mind works, dopamine, serotonin, for me, the endorphins that I feel when I move my body, I feel good. Believe me, I didn't want to get up this morning. You can hear me groggy. I don't let how I feel dictate what I do. when it's X time, I just get up and then I start going through the motions of executing, right? And that just started happening because I held myself to a higher standard. When you hold yourself to a higher standard, it's pretty hard to get to a low spot and have my brain turn on me and say, Trevor, because our brain turns on us, right? And tells us that we're not worthy or this or imposter syndrome like we talked about earlier. How is my mind going to turn on me when I'm executing every single day and doing a lot of the right shit? Trevor, you're only doing 2 a days. You're a little bitch. You're only reading 10 pages a day. Like I have to make sure visually that I'm outworking everybody. It has to be undisputable for me because I don't give myself credit. So if I'm not absolutely just running circles around people, I don't believe I'm good enough. I have to visually see and I still have to execute on a high level because that's how talentless I am. I believe that I'm so talentless that I have to work hard to get what I'm going to get. And I think a lot of people rest on the fact that they were pretty talented. I think talent's somewhat of a curse.
Yeah.
Because we can rest on that son of a bitch and it will take us to some cool places. But what happens when your talent runs out and you're at the top threshold of your current limitations? And then you go up against a guy that earned his talent through hard work, and hard work now kicks in, but the talent guy isn't used to that. But this guy over here that's worked hard is used to it. It's just another day for him. But over here, this guy's like, I'm on empty.
Yeah.
I'm not used to going into the dark side of having to actually grind, right? And that's the difference. That's why you see 2 people in the UFC fighting or whatever it is. The guy that actually grinded, the prodigy, BJ Penn, yeah, he was good at first when he wasn't really fighting that many people because the UFC wasn't that big yet.
Yeah.
Now you're going up against just dogs that have worked hard ever since they were all over the world. There's no such thing as a prodigy anymore in the UFC because you can't just be a good fighter and knock some people out. Like you've got to be well-rounded and you've got to work hard, right? And so you saw the UFC get bigger and bigger, and then you saw them start competing against just some dogs that worked hard. The prodigy went down,
right?
Like he started getting his ass whooped. So
they came out of these countries no one's ever heard of that don't have a lot of the luxuries that we have.
Yeah. Talentless like a motherfucker, and just had to work hard for everything that they got, wrestling bears and shit.
Right. Like literally.
Yeah. Like that's what they do for fun. Kids in the US are riding bikes and, going to the store to get a refill of Pepsi.
Right.
While these guys are wrestling
32
bears.
Cent Tuesdays,
yeah,
man.
Hell yeah. Believe me, I remember it, bro. Throw the mug on your handlebars and ride on down, dude.
Me and Trevor are both from old D-Town, so we got some D-Town stories for sure. Dude, that was a great. I wrote down a couple things, and I think the biggest thing was, well, and you had kind of mentioned it before we got on. So you talked about a lot that you had bought south of town, great view, acre, gonna put a big house on it. And it's funny, dude, because when you were saying all that, I'm like drawing parallels. And financially, like I'm not on your level, but I think our mentalities of growing up,
poor.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't consider us poor, but my parents were always arguing about money and always in credit card debt and everything else. Yeah. We had some luxuries because my parents leveraged credit cards. So
I guess that's credit.
I guess that's poor.
Thank God they had good credit.
Yeah. I mean, it was still paycheck to paycheck and everything else. Until I got a little older, then it really got south on their finances. But anyway, I'm sitting there thinking about, and I had this. One of my goals this year is to speak, and I don't know why, but it's to speak in 12 high school classes.
Oh, that's cool.
And I don't know where it came from. When I talk to people that go talk in high schools, there's something in me like gets a little jealous. I don't know why. And I've always been like, oh, I should reach out to a teacher I had or hit up Pine View or whatever. And then January, I thought, dude, I'm talking about, like, I try not to talk about things, I do things.
Yeah.
And it's something I've been talking about for like a year.
Yeah.
And so I finally put it on paper. Okay, I'm talking in 12. Well, at first I was like, I'm talking in 1. And then I was like, well, one's easy. Like that's a 1 day thing. You know, I got 365 days. 1 day's easy.
Go to freaking recess, bro, and just get a group of them and start make that thing happen. You know.
Well, then I was like,
something to say.
I was like 12 because that's one a month.
Yeah.
And then I put it 12, wrote it down. I've got them laminated. I got my goals laminated.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, 12, dude. I was thinking 1 a month. School's not even in every month. So then I kind of almost like started, I caught it in my mind that I like started backpedaling.
I didn't even think about that when you were saying that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And so I was like, okay, well, how many months is school in? Is that like 9? So should it be 9? And then I was like, no, dude, it's 12. It's done. It's in ink. It's 12. Yeah. And so I had reached out to one of my teachers that I knew was still in the school system somewhere. She's actually vice principal at Crimson. And I said, hey, I don't know, if you could connect me with the right people. This is one of my goals this year. But I don't know where to start. Can you help me out? And she said, I'm actually vice principal over here. Absolutely. I'd love to help you. That day she put me in contact with the business teacher. And then I think by the next day I'd sent him an outline and they had me scheduled for like a week after that. So that was last week. I went and spoken in their class. Yeah. And
that's cool.
I'm sitting there thinking like, when I was talking to them, the reason I bring that up is I was talking to them and one of them said like, have you ever one of the kids asked, have you ever had a down moment in your business where, and I'm thinking like, yeah, I've got 100 of them, right?
Yeah, but have you ever,
They're like, did you ever get to a point where you're like, is this worth it type of thing? And I thought for a second and it hit me that like, so my wife is a 6-figure earner. She's a nurse practitioner at the hospital.
Yeah.
And so I've always kind of I can take more risks because I feel like I can fall back on that.
Yeah.
And when I started making more money than my wife, I was thinking like, dang, we've kind of made it, like I'm doing over 6 figures. She's doing over 6 figures. And when you're that kid in Washington, I'm like, dude, if you can just make 6 figures, you're golden.
Dude. Yeah. I thought that too. I was like,
right.
Dude, I'm like a house payment, even if it was $5,000 a month and a couple car payments and a boat pay, like $10,000, but you're not thinking about taxes and this and all like the little teeny expenses. You think you're going to be rich as shit,
right?
Off of 6 figures, but then you hit it and you're like, where'd the money go?
Well, and we were like both doing 6 figures.
Yeah,
and, I mean, we were doing about $300K a year.
Yeah,
and I was thinking like, dude, we've done it. We've made it. We have mountain property. We've got a razor. We both have trucks we like. And I got to a point where I was like. We've done it. What's next? Mm-hmm. And I kind of started going down that same, like a similar thing that you were talking about. Yeah. And I thought like, okay, what do you do now? And I even asked my brother, Adam, who's very successful and in real estate and in different things. And I asked him, and he said, well, it's time to have kids because we didn't have any kids. I was 28 and I didn't even know if I wanted kids at the time. Yeah. So I was like, whatever, dude.
You're like, if it's going to help me make more money, all right.
Well, I'll do it. And my wife was like, hey, I think it's time we start having kids. So I was kind of reluctant for a while, so we have a 2-year-old now, cool. 2-year-old son. And when we had my son, man, it like hit another gear with me. And so it was giving me chills when you were talking about that environment that you've produced, through your dedication and your consistency that now your kids are starting to see that. I'm 2 years behind you on that. Like I'm trying to figure out how do I put that out there? How do I get him to see me do these things? How do I get him to see me do the positive stuff? I think your 2-a-days and your reading it's probably just a habit, a personality habit of you now, right?
Yeah, dude, it's not uncommon that if I'm in my truck or whatever, I'll look in the rearview mirror. My son's in the back seat that's 7 now with a book.
Yeah.
Looking down at his book because he thinks that that's just what you do.
Right.
Because that's the environment. They want to grow up and be like their dad.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So,
well, what was it like for your environment growing up? Because me, it was sports. That's all my dad, my dad would come home, we'd sit on the front lawn, he'd sit on a bucket and we'd throw him pitches. Like that was before we got homework done. Yeah. Right? So like, what was your environment growing up?
My environment was the complete opposite of the environment that I'm creating. Right? My mother was probably the most loving mother that exists on the planet. We didn't have like anything hardly growing up. My mom, I had her on the podcast in December, about a month and a half ago. And she told me when she listened to the first episode of our podcast that she started crying. And she said it put her in a depression for like 3 months. And I felt bad about it. I was like, yo, why?
Right.
You know? And she said, I tried to hide how bad it was. You know, how bad the situation was that we were in financially. And she went on to, you know, tell the stories of putting cardboard on the bottom of our shoes, gluing it on just so our feet didn't go through the holes, right?
Yeah.
You know, powdered milk. She explained some stories like in July, you know, I've got a couple of sisters, their birthday's in July, my birthday's in July. And she says it was tough because sometimes July, the grandparents would send us a, you know, happy birthday, here's $5, whatever. And she had to figure out a way to make it fun for us to take our $5 and go to the store and buy like milk or eggs or whatever, that we got to do that, like happy birthday.
Right.
And she says it just kind of broke her heart. There was a moment that my sister wanted to eat like hot lunch at school, but it costs money, you know. And she says, well, I got a wiggly tooth. If I take my tooth out, do you think I can get money from the tooth fairy tonight? And she's sitting there, you know, her heart's broke because she's the tooth fairy.
Yeah, right.
You know, she ain't got no money, right? So that was the kind of the environment that I grew up in, you know, not the best financially in terms of father figure, not the best, not necessarily drugs or alcohol or anything like that. There was I would say laziness. You know, I did play sports. When I went camping, it was with my friends and their dad. It was the memories that I have of him is like him sitting around watching a BYU football game on the 3 channels that we got on our TV on a Saturday, you know, making a plate of nachos with, you know, but that was like maybe all the food we had was just cheese and, you know. So I didn't get hard work or any of that, any of those traits from that. I'm a big believer that, you know, there's the alcoholic that has a child and the child becomes an alcoholic and says, well, my parent is an alcoholic, so da 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 da. And then there's the other person who says, I despise them, so I will never drink a drop of alcohol, right? Like, and they say, why don't you become the individual that you wanted as a father figure? And to me, that hit me hard, right? Like I want them to see what the definition of hard work is. I want them to understand what sacrifice is, what grinding looks like, and why it's such a beautiful thing, and how it's an investment into your future. Time is either your best friend or your worst enemy based upon your habits and your actions and your routines and the decisions that you're making today. If I'm making a bunch of bad decisions, time is my worst enemy. It's going to catch up to me. It will compound and something bad will happen. And I'll pay the price, you know, maybe not immediately, but it will happen. Or time is going to be my best friend and the good decisions will compound and I'll receive because of that, right? We're going to receive regardless. And so I just kind of watched the way that he did things and was somewhat embarrassed that we grew up in the situation that we grew up in. I didn't like people coming over to the house. I remember at a very young age saying, you know, this is not okay. I will not live like this. I used to get frustrated when I saw infomercials that was like, yo, buy this program for $59, learn how to make 10 grand a month in real estate. I'm like, yo, get $39. Like you could make 10 grand a month. It says it right there on the TV, you know? Obviously infomercials, you know?
Yeah. Pass me the nachos.
I didn't know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What are we watching infomercials for? Shouldn't you be at work? You know, we're broke as shit. Lights just got shut off, you know? And so, yeah, I mean, that was the environment that I grew up in, man, was poor. And so it forced me, with that said, I had the luxury of growing up in that environment. And that's my perspective because I already knew I was in an environment where if I wanted something, I couldn't go ask for it because we couldn't even keep that. Like literally, I remember my mom crying to utility departments several times, why the lights are shut off. Hey, I've got 7 kids here. Can I pay you $50 on Friday? You know, lighting candles and shit. You know, like that was
That's real.
Yeah, that's real ass shit. So when you see that, do you think you like when your homies are going to the roller rink, though?
Yeah, right.
Whirly bird and shit. Um, Outer Limits is what they think they changed it to after a while. But if I needed $10 for a new tire or this or whatever it was, I already knew I was in an environment where I couldn't just go ask for it like some people. I had to create for myself, and that's very empowering, right? So I utilized that as I got older, that nobody's going to solve my problems for me and I have to create, right? So if I want $10, how are you going to get $10?
Right.
Right? If I want to be successful, I can't depend on society to bring me, options to be. I have to create these options through, discipline and I did that. I did that because I was like, okay, let's be real for a second. You're a fucking idiot. You were a super senior. You didn't even walk with your class on time. Right. And so after that, whatever, I went into sales, got, addicted to drugs, got clean at 24. And I had that conversation because there's life altering moments through conversations that you have with yourself. And I was like, all right, keep it real, bro. You ain't the college type. Smarts ain't gonna do it for you because you haven't been blessed with that. But you've always been willing to hustle ever since you were little to get what you wanted. And I knew sales was an opportunity where there was no ceiling, right? The ceiling was me.
Right.
If I hustled hard, I got, more.
Yeah, like, I mean,
right?
there's 24 hours in a day, but
yeah.
I can outwork everyone else.
Yeah, that's the thing is like, okay, you're telling me all I've got to do is work hard? Bet. I've done that. And so that's what I did. And I said to myself, I'm like, yo, you're an idiot, but I know that opportunity finds one of two things. Opportunity finds smart people to make the opportunity come to reality, or it finds money because that's the fuel that makes it come alive. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not smart.
Well, it leaves one.
I've got one option. I gotta have money, right? So when I went into sales, I started doing good after I got clean from drugs, all that, and started making 120, 130 grand a year at, 25, 26. Meanwhile, I'm driving a $3,500 paid off Mitsubishi Lancer with no air conditioning. I'm living in a $750 a month shithole, Hawk Hollow townhouse where it's right behind Pineview High School.
Yeah.
Or the seminary building right there. But it was $750 a month back then, right? That's what, 14 years ago? But the carpet was shit stained and, whatever. But I'm sitting there making $10,000 a month, driving a paid off car, living in a shithole house. Why? Because I knew opportunity will always find money. Why do broke people always say, man, I can't catch a break? What value do you bring the opportunity? Are you super smart or do you have money?
Right.
Usually broke people don't have either, right? I was broke once and I didn't have smarts and I didn't have money. So why would opportunity come find me? I wasn't of value to it. Why do rich people get presented opportunities all the time? It's weird now that I have money, people want to bring me business. I would love to meet with you. Da, 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 da. Weird.
Right.
All I did was create for myself, and now opportunities are attracted to me. They're finding me. I don't have to go out there and search for it anymore. But I purposely lived like that so that I could stack cash because I'm an idiot. I was smart enough to know that I'm an idiot.
Right.
Right.
And you were self-aware.
I'm a realist, bro. I'm like, bro, you ain't that guy. You ain't got the brains or whatever. Right. And so I stacked cash, and I did that for years. And then opportunities started happening.
Yeah.
Because I had cash in the bank, and then I still live by that same principle today, dude. I still live by living way beneath your means. Like the house I bought, with the 3 acres, I pay for that cash. I lived in the house that I eventually bought when I moved out of the townhouse, for like 250 grand, $1,300 a month. I lived in that from the point when I was making a couple $100 grand a year all the way into the millions. My payment was $1,300 a month. All my cars were paid off. So like my house payment was less than 1% of my income. While I was what? Stacking cash. Because I'm an idiot, right? And I know that opportunity loves cash, right? And so I still live by that same principle. My trucks are paid off. The house, I still have the other house in Washington that I bought when I moved out of the townhouse. Just cleaning that up and, going to rent it out or whatever and have it cash flow. Because I can put a renter in it for $3,000 a month and it's $1,300 a month. Or I could just pay it off with the 160 or whatever that's left on it. But it's like, why would I pay it off when it would actually just cash flow $1,700 a month? It's like, whatever. So the only debt that I have is a debt that has the ability to bring me in money. Everything else I have is paid off. I've got $500,000 plus in investments in other businesses outside of my businesses. I have several businesses making me money, and I've got money in the bank. You know what I mean? And so it's like, I'm accomplishing all the things that I wanted to accomplish based upon what? I was willing to live in a shithole townhouse and drive a $3,000 shithole car with no AC while I was making 6 figures a year. And people wonder why they can't catch a break.
Yeah.
You ain't giving yourself one. You aren't willing to eat bowls of shit. You know what I mean? For year after year after year. Like 6 figures is the perfect opportunity to set you up for 7 figures if you play your cards right. The problem is people make sacrifices in order to get into the 6 figures, and right when they touch it, they're like, "We got there. Now we can celebrate, and now we can buy the houses and the cars and the this." And then guess what? Then they get caught in a 6-figure lifestyle trap. And they've put a ceiling on what they have the ability to do with their life because now they're living the life. If it took years to sacrifice to get to the 6 figures, what would happen if you make 6 figures and still sacrificed? Great opportunity for the 7-figure.
Yeah.
Right? Now that I have the 7-figure life, right? My bills are $1,300 a month on a house that once we're done cleaning it out, will cash flow me money. And my businesses are still making money and I have money in the bank. So all that's going to do is continue to set me up for something greater than what my current situation is. And I can take risk. I can put $200,000 into something and lose it all, and I'm not risking my lifestyle.
Right.
I own my lifestyle. I don't pay payments on my lifestyle. Right? And so I think people just need to think about a bigger picture. Same thing that I talked about early on in the podcast. We were willing to go into it and not judge it for 3 to 5 years. Is somebody really willing to sacrifice for 3 to 5 years to make something happen? And then right when it's starting to happen, give it 3 to 5 years before they actually start rewarding themselves. So there's a couple phases of these 3 to 5 years, right? 3 to 5 years to set yourself up for something good. Great. Now something good is happening. Don't go over reward yourself because you can't control your impulses, because you're trying to get that artificial dopamine hit through that watch or through that car or through that house, because you don't have self-worth, right? And if you don't have self-worth, you have to get dopamine somewhere. You might as well get it artificially because you sure as hell ain't earning it through self-worth, not financial worth, because those are two totally different things, right? Like at one point I had financial worth, but I didn't have self-worth, and that's why I was hollow. So I had to focus on self, and my money was good at that point anyway.
Sure.
So I told you I'm a talker.
Well, it's interesting, dude, because I've never looked at it that way where like my mentality. So my dad did teach me how to work. Yeah. I got work ethic straight from my dad.
Yeah.
Like my mom too, but my dad, he was a UPS driver.
Yeah.
But when he wasn't working at UPS, he was working, whether that's like on the yard. He did a service for a lot of people. He was heavy in our church. He was always doing stuff.
Yeah.
And so I never knew anything else. It was just work. And so even like as I'm sitting here right now, I'm learning this from you, is I've always said, like, I'll just outwork you.
Yeah.
But that's only a very, very small component.
Yeah. Will you out-sacrifice?
Yeah.
Will you outwork and be okay with not rewarding yourself with the result and still outwork? when there's not the shiny object.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we're cool to outwork people as long as we have something to show for it.
Well, and it's outwork. Yeah. Outwork people, have that sacrifice. I'm the same. I'm not the brainiac. And so that was my thing too, dude, is,
I wish I didn't have to work this hard.
well, that's what's funny, man, is like, I think about my 2-year-old son, and my wife is highly educated. I mean, has her master's degree. I think she has 5 degrees. And like, I couldn't wait to get out of high school.
Yeah.
You know, there's no way I was choosing to go to college.
Yeah. My mom hung up a report card that was like all D's and D minuses besides like PE. I had an A there, but just because I had passed every class that quarter.
Yeah.
That was the first time she ever seen a report card without, F's speckled.
Incompletes or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. It was just like, damn, that was my mom's proud moment.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the turd that, that eventually got polished to what he is today.
It's interesting too, dude, because we share that as well. Like, our moms were saints.
Yeah.
And my mom was the same way. Like, she was the glue that held everything.
Yeah.
And you think about, like, I was probably a step, like, I had all my necessities filled. Mm-hmm. But I knew if I wanted to go get that bike, or like, my thing, I had a GoPed, one of those little motorized scooters, right?
You were a rich kid.
But
in my
I worked
eyes,
for
anyways.
2 years. Yeah. I worked for 2 years mowing lawns to buy that thing.
Yeah. Well, still in my eyes, you were rich, but I didn't see the work, right?
Yeah,
and that just shows you, right, the mentality of most people. They don't see the work; they just see the result, and they're just like, "Oh,
exactly."
Lucky. I would have labeled you as rich because I was just poor kid and had a poor mentality. Right?
Well, I think a lot of people thought we were. I mean, we had a really nice house right in Washington. We built it ourselves, so it was like 1970s homes all around us, and then we built it brand new in 96, I think, and it was 2 stories, so it just looked massive. Everyone had basements. Half of our basement was in the ground, but so it's super tall. And I don't know if you knew where we lived or not, but
I went to a house party there once.
Yeah.
I think your older brother was throwing
I'm sure it was Mike.
Yeah. I went once.
Yeah. So everyone looked at us like, oh, brand new house, the rich kids moving in. And I'm like, again, like, when we first built that, my parents were doing okay.
Yeah.
But my whole life, I had, until I was about 17, 18, that's kind of when I started taking over a lot of the bills from my dad. He started kind of mentally manipulating me into paying things. And I had I had a job right out of, or during high school. I had 2 jobs right out of high school. Wow. And then I'd work 2 jobs. Well, now I have 4. So it's not like I've worked 2 jobs or more since then. Wow. And my dad mentality was starting to fall. Depression, bipolar, everything. And he would come see that I was making money, and he'd come to me for when the power's off. You know, like, and then he started relying on me. Oh, well, hey, the cell phones are going to get turned off. But he would tell me this is what my cell phone cost. And I was paying for mine, his, and my brother's, like, I didn't know what they cost. So he's like, oh, dude, it's $500 this month for your cell phone. And I'm like, cool, man. Like, thanks for taking care of that for me. And it's $400 for, I had a Mitsubishi Spider Eclipse convertible. Oh, that's cool. When I was 17, 18. Yeah. So he's like, dude, it's expensive for a 17-year-old male to have a convertible 2-seater.
It's $3,000 a month for insurance. Give it up.
Well, I think he was telling me it was like $470 or something. Well, that was everyone's insurance. And so he did that to me for years until everything kind of got bad. I don't even know if you know anything about my dad, but he had attempted suicide multiple times when he was still at the house. I ended up kind of getting my brothers together and said, hey, he can't live here anymore. Like, I'm taking care of everything. Yeah. And I can't even leave to go to work because his mentality is so dark that I don't know what's going to happen while I'm gone, And so we ended up telling him he had to go move in with family. So I kind of took over everything. And we moved my mom out into a town home that my grandparents helped with. And then I stayed in that house for years. I ended up getting married. I still lived in that house. 2 years ago, we built another house, and I'd been in that house the entire time. Damn. And then my dad, this is bad that I don't even know this, but so at that time, I just cut my dad off. Yeah. Didn't talk to him. it's too much drama. I just couldn't deal with it. I was trying to make my own life. Dating my now wife then, and he ultimately committed suicide 4 or 5 years ago. And so like, when I was talking in school, I kind of mentioned a lot of this stuff. And I was like, I don't want anyone to feel bad for me, because you got to understand, this is what molded me. Like, this made me who I am. It made me, if I wanted that go-ped, I had to mow lawns for 2 years. You know, if I wanted that house, I had to work 2 jobs. If I wanted to put my wife through college, and she worked on and off through college, but if I wanted that, I had to pick up a 3rd job, you know, or I had to build my own side business. And I started building custom holsters and built Weapon X holsters for years in my basement at midnight and 1 o'clock in the morning for just that extra cash. Right. And so like that work ethic for me has always been there, because I've always had to have it if I wanted to upgrade. But it's funny when you're sitting there talking and you were like, yeah, we had this lot up on the hill overlooking town. And I'm like, well, we just built a house on a hill looking over town. And I was like, dude, that's us. Did I celebrate too early when I'm sitting here talking to you?
I don't know, man. Everybody's different, bro. Everybody's goals are different. Like, you know, my definition of success might be different than other people's definition of success. Everybody's playing a different game, and everybody's running their own race, bro. Like, who am I to tell you what race to run? Right? Like, that's your life. You'll have to deal with the repercussions of your decisions, and so will I, right? So whether good, whether bad, like I don't know, right? Like, and I don't know whether all my decisions are the right decisions. I have to deal with those, then analyze them, look at the data, and then make adjustments. That's how we become self-aware.
Exactly.
That's why 18-year-olds aren't self-aware. They're changing too much from the time of 0 to 18. They don't have enough data on themselves in a bunch of different situations to where they can now create a life for themselves and understand, hey, well, maybe I don't perform well in this environment. For me, it was, and believe me, I'm a slow learner. I told you I wasn't smart. Alcohol, large groups of people after 10 o'clock at night. That was an environment that produced fights, that produced me going to jail, that produced, you know, just bad consequences, right? Like, dude, I've been knocked out. I've had 4 DUIs. I've, you know, hurt people. So I've been hurt, and that, like, it just is what it is, because I'm an idiot with this recipe of after 10 o'clock at night with alcohol and with lots of people, right? And so it's like, I was a slow learner, but eventually I had the data that I needed to say, Trevor, don't go out with alcohol around lots of people after X time. Because I started to see the pattern. But if you're not old enough, how are you going to see a pattern? Because you haven't put yourself in the same environments over and over and over and over to see how whether the result's good or bad. Right. And that's why I'm such a big person on controlling environments, because when I wasn't controlling it, life was just kind of, you know, washing me around, and
I was making,
you know, like I had 4 DUIs later, right? And like, screw cops. Like, it wasn't the cops, dude. I was out drinking and driving. Like, I was making a dumb decision, and that's what happens. And that's choice and consequence. In regards to you, it's choice and consequence, right? Like, if that's what brings you true happiness, and you feel good with your house on the hill, and that's makes you feel accomplished, then that's awesome. For me, that's exactly what I thought I wanted. You know, because I grew up poor, and I drove by Stonecliff, and I'd look up and be like, wow, house on a hill. I'm going to get that one day. I'm going to have that. And was it because I truly just wanted the house on the hill, or is it just because everybody else would look at the house on the hill and say, man, whoever has that house on that hill is successful, and I want to be like them, right? It would be, again, undeniable that I was finally successful to everybody.
That's Trevor's house.
I felt inadequate, and everybody had to know I was successful. And that's really why I wanted the house on the hill. Yeah, there'd be the luxury of the pool and this and that, whatever. But, you know, I reanalyzed. I'm like, am I really like playing for what everybody else thinks about me, or trying to play this game, and have I gone through everything that I've gone through just to let this little boy inside of me know that he's finally successful, right? Or am I trying to play for real financial security? Do I really want to build a fortress and a moat around my life, that the one thing that's certain is what I've created, and it doesn't matter what's happening out in the world, any uncertainty, that I can get hit, I can get in a car accident leaving this place. My family's good, right? Like, I've just seen people do really well financially and live the life in the, whatever, the Boulders or Eagle Ridge or whatever back in the day, right? St. James,
St.
whatever,
James, yeah.
all these rich people. But I've seen some people live that lifestyle and have these beautiful houses to then get old and lose it all. And they have nothing left to show for it. My biggest fear is being poor. I still worry about being poor, even though I own a lot of the things that I have, right? And everything I have besides the one house. But I ended up, putting that for, Brody.
Yeah.
Fawcett, he bought it from me.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he owes me $500,000 in like 2 months.
That's awesome.
Hey, pay up, Brody. He gave
Here's
me
your call out.
Yeah, he put $100,000 deposit on it. So, I'm making money. He's getting what he wants. That's his dream, right? Like, I wanted more of a rural area with more space. So I got, it's for me, it's quality of life.
Yeah.
Like, I'm butted up against the river. Like, I put my bike and my son's bike and, in the back of the truck, drive 8 minutes, drop off my truck, pull the bikes out, ride the bike home. I drop a tube in the river that's butted up on our property and float an hour and a half to my truck. Right? Those are the experiences that I'm creating because I decided that it wasn't about the little boy that's in me. It's really about, the family that I'm creating and the quality of life that I can create out there for them versus being on their phones or this, that. I can tell them to go outside and play because that's what I did, or I can create an environment that's inviting them to go outside and play. Right? He shoots his little bow out in the orchard, built him the BMX track out in the horse pasture. The river's right there. The Virgin BMX track is up the street. We ride bikes. We have our Can-Am where we go for rides. We go up to Kolob because it's a direct shot, right? We go up to Springdale sometimes and eat breakfast on a Saturday or Sunday morning when it's a little more calm and chill. Like, for me, it was quality of life and understanding that my family is the most important thing. And I needed to create an environment where we can come together as a family. And it would be more inviting for us to do things together there than, just sit out back on the pool, overlooking the city, looking down on peasants.
Sure.
Right? Like,
sure.
so to speak,
Yeah.
right? Like, because that's what I felt like as a kid, man, driving by. I was just a peasant and they were just like rich people. I always felt like people looked down on me. And now I purposely live a life to where nobody could tell that I have money. Like, if you look at me, like, you're not gonna be like, oh, that guy's rich. Sometimes you can look at people and you think that they're rich, but really their credit cards are maxed out. They're
Right.
looking like they're rich. I actually want to be rich, not look like I'm rich. And those are two totally different things. Now, some people are actually rich and look rich. Cool. But the majority of people that look rich are going through something that you have no idea about. And now you're running the wrong race because you're competing against somebody that's a front. They've just faked it better than you, or they've got better credit, right?
Yeah.
Like we talked about your parents using credit cards or whatever, right? And so it's like, that's why I said, just run your race. Like,
Sure.
who am I to say if you did it early or late or, whatever. Like, for me, my biggest fear is being poor. And so that's why I keep my monthly expenses pretty much to nothing while I have good income so that I could stack cash. And that cash is helping me build a moat around my life to where I actually own my life and I have real financial security, not worrying about what you think about me type of security, right?
Yeah.
That's when self-worth starts kicking in versus are you making decisions really in hopes that other people think something about you, think that you're cool, or think that you're rich, or think that, like we try to manipulate the world into making them think that we're something that we're not by showing up a certain way. When we feel hollow, and that's why we're looking for that, right? Rather than just being like, dude, I'm a fucked up kid and I'm an idiot. I knew I needed to save money and make some sacrifices, and here I am today. Thank God, I was smart enough just to identify some commonalities in my patterns and keep it real with myself. And, luckily the bowl of shit started tasting good. You know what I mean? Because
sacrifice started getting normal.
Yeah. I mean, when you now have the lifestyle that you want and you don't have really bills around it, like, is it really eating shit anymore? Because I kind of have what I want, even though I could have more, I'm good.
Right.
Because like, I already talked about the lifestyle that I'm creating for myself and my family. And,
you're not creating your lifestyle for anyone else to look at. You're owning your life. I love the way you put that.
Yeah. I don't rent my life from the bank, so to speak.
Yeah.
So,
I like how you kind of talked about two different paths. Everyone's on their own path. And so for me, building that house, wasn't surrounding the environment of neighbors and people around me where my kid's going to grow up.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it was for me going into that. I love Washington. I mean, that's where I'm from. But I looked around at a lot of people, and I mean, I had like 2 janitors that lived on my street and a teacher, and not that they were bad people. I mean, they helped me throughout a lot of my childhood, but I wanted my kid to understand that there's just more than 30 grand a year, 40 grand a year. And I had a lot of people I looked up to in that neighborhood. And then I moved into the neighborhood we're in now, and it's doctors and lawyers and my brother's Adam's 3 doors down. So like that was a big thing for us. And so more of it's just like
cousins and
family and environment. And Adam's got a lot of friends and he's been in that area for, I don't know, 10 years now, probably. So, but yeah, it's kind of interesting the way you put that, because I was seriously in my mind, I'm like, shit, man, did I do it wrong? And then you're like, no, this is what you're doing.
Is like, as long as you're doing it for the right reasons, why would you let anybody else come in and have you second guess yourself like that, right? Like, as long as you're doing it for the right reasons, like for me, bro, do you really think a lot of people understand? Like, I moved to Virgin, Utah, Podunk. Like, there's less than 1,000 people there.
Right.
Like, I don't need to be understood by you. Sure. I don't need to be understood by anybody else. Like, I already tried to be understood by everybody else. And I ended up hollow because I was trying to be have you understand where I'm coming from and be the person that you wanted me to be. Like, if you wanted me to rage with you, bro, let's rage, let's party. I'll bring the 30 pack. Like, if that's what it took to fit in, right?
Right.
And I might have been understood by way more people back then, but I was hollow. I wasn't understood by myself, right? And I didn't have self-worth, and that's why I needed to be understood and fit in, right? And so it's just, for me, that's why it's like, I don't have to understand your decisions, and you don't have to understand mine. Everybody thought I was crazy moving out to Virgin, bro. Paying 7 figures for a property in Virgin where there's trailers around and shit.
Sounds great.
Like, bro, I walked in the house and I just made a beeline to the back door. I said, they're like, do you want to see the house? I said, I don't give a shit about the house. Let me see the property.
Yeah.
And I opened the back door and there's wild turkeys, like 20 wild turkeys walking through. I said, I love it.
Yeah.
Let's do this damn thing.
I love it, dude.
And so I honored the way that it made me feel, and when everyone thought, what the hell? It's like, I don't care. Finally, I got to a point to where I'm making decisions that connect, that make me feel good. And it's okay as long as you feel good to be misunderstood by everybody else. they're already hollow. That's why they're judging you based upon your decisions, right? Because they're trying to keep up with society standards, right?
Yeah.
So I don't really worry about it or let people second guess my decisions, and neither should you. Like, my life is my life and yours is yours. Your quality of life is probably great. Your kids is going to grow up in a wonderful neighborhood next to their uncle and run around with cousins and shit like that. Like, you're creating an environment for your children that you believe will be best for them. And I respect that.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Dude, I think that's a good way to end it right there. I think that own your life is a big thing I'm taking out of this. Own your environment, control your environment.
All we are is a product of our environment. If you can create an environment for yourself, right, by not going to, if I went to the bar, I'm, a partier, right? I'm going to create an environment over here for my family to where I become a family man, right? Like, if you're a product of your environment, create the environment so that you dictate your product, which is you, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And putting that environment around your kids and them seeing your habits. Yeah. And it's not, I think it's just who you are now. Like, that's who dad is.
Yeah.
He exercises twice a day and he reads.
I'm a badass motherfucker that just happens to be an idiot.
That just happens that you realized early to stack cash.
I should tell them, hey, you guys are all descendants of idiots. You better figure out how to work hard. I'll show you how it's done.
Right. Cool, man. I really appreciate you coming on today.
It's good. It was fun.
I want to get Kale on, and then I do want to do one with both you guys down the road. We'll spread this out so you're not spending too much time with me. But
Santa Clara,
there you go. It's a long drive, man.
Yeah, often.
It's one of my businesses is we own contract routes out of Hurricane for the post office.
Cool.
So for years I had drove from Hurricane to Hilldale, and I still own that contract now. It's been like 13 years.
Yeah,
and then I have another one now, maybe the last 5 years, that goes Hurricane to Zion. And so they actually deliver your mail. Yeah. And so
I still get mail at my other house.
Oh, do you? Well, if you ever switch that
box and
you got to do that in the Hurricane, right?
P.O. box is in Laverne.
Do Virgin out of Lavercan's post office.
Yeah, so we haven't done all that. We have a couple houses, so
it's still bouncing around.
Still ship it to that. I'm still down in St. George 4 times a week. So I'll pick it up later.
Yeah, but that's a long drive, man. I
love it.
I live in Tonnequint now.
Yeah,
and so going from Tonnequint to Hilldale, when I cover that route. One of my brothers is actually doing it now, so I haven't had to do it a lot.
Yeah.
But I did it the other day, so I do like once every few months now. And I covered that route, drove all the way out there, drove all the way home, and I'm like, I just drove to both sides of the county.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot of driving.
That's how I felt when I came out to Santa Clara from Virgin, bro. It's like an hour deep, bro.
Well, dude, I appreciate you. I appreciate you taking time out. Yeah. I know you had a couple things going on this morning, and you made yourself available for us, so I appreciate it.
Glad I did.
But yeah, dude, I've liked getting to know you more.
Yeah. Likewise.
This is fun. So we'll have to do some more stuff in the future. But that's episode 83 for you guys. It's Derick Legg Podcast. Trevor Cowley. How can people follow you? Just Instagram. What are you most active on?
I keep my Instagram private. I'm a pretty private person. I talk a lot of shit.
Real business owners.
Real business owners. Okay. Yeah. I have a person that manages that. So,
okay. But if people want to get in front of you, that's how they can do it.
That's the best way to get in front of me now, because I don't manage the Real Business Owners account like I did the first few years, is probably just Facebook. You can send me a message, just Trevor Cowley on Facebook.
Yeah.
I don't let a whole lot of people behind the scenes on my Instagram, but
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Real Business Owners, they've got a podcast out 4 years. Go and listen to it, subscribe to it. You'll definitely get value from it. I did. That was one of my kind of springboards into doing my own podcast. You guys kind of gave me a little bit of confidence to be able to, small town boy to be able to get on and do his own. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, we handle business, small town boys.
There it is. Yeah. Okay, guys, thanks for being here. Please like, rate, comment, interact with us. We love getting on there and messaging you guys back and forth. If you want to reach out to Trevor, seriously, get in front of his podcast. I know it'll help you guys out. And we'll see you guys next week.